Hey gang, this is my first time recording and editing a radio show into a podcast. This is a presentation of the Blotter Radio Zine from 103.5 LP WCOM FM in Chapel Hill in Carborough. I'm your host, Chris Bullock. I've never edited audio like this before, and I have had to punch in the introduction again. So, yeah, thank you for listening. Bear with me as I figure out how this works. There will be some rough audio jumps from one source to the other. One captured the first third or so of the show, and the other one captured the rest, but they are quite different in quality, and that will have to be okay. But just remember, we'll get through all this together, and that is foreshadowing. Now, to cut into the broadcast. You may have already been able to ascertain from the character of the introduction, skipping the music, and without any guests, I am your erstwhile host, Chris Bullock. I think I forgot to mute the music, but here we are. Your erstwhile host, Chris Bullock. This is a very special episode. This is entitled Farther On, a Fireside Chat. So, last week did not exactly go like majority of the people I know who listen to both this show and this station, and who also have shows at the station, would have hoped. This is a dark time for America, and an even darker time that we are heading towards. But this is not a doomer show. Your host has not, in fact, been black-pilled, as I believe the kids are saying. Black-pilled is a reference to red-pilled or blue-pilled from the Matrix, the alt-right, the manosphere, the embodiments of toxic masculinity have adopted the Matrix, a trans allegory written by two trans women, as red-pilled is when you see the truth. You understand that women are at the root and men are the ultimate abused class in society, despite everything that your history book may have ever taught you about the world. So, this is entitled Farther On, as in the Jackson Browne song Farther On, that I will not be playing on air, because this is the first recording of the show that I intend to release into the wider world. We are looking at Trump 2, Electric Boogaloo, many people's nightmare. Everyone that I know that I would actually care to interact with is at least a little bit uneasy right now. And since Election Day and thereafter, I have done what comes naturally to me almost like a bubbling faucet or an overflowing toilet, which is whenever I get the chance to talk to someone who is uneasy, I spring into hope mode. You would think that hope mode, and some of the way I talk, it sounds almost like I stepped out of a novel, like I'm a Steinbeck protagonist, or like I've read Joan Didion and took uppers instead of downers. I have read Joan Didion, and I have taken more uppers than downers, but that's besides the point. If you're listening, Mom, sorry. So, we have 69 days until the second inauguration of one Donald J. Trump to the office of President of the United States. Something I did not want to happen, something that no one I know who I would bring onto my show wanted to happen. And everyone that I know is a little unsteady. And so I would like to offer some words to consider as we move forwards. We have 69 days to prepare. As my friend Angie, who has guested on the show before, said, this looks dark, this looks bad, but this is not the end of it. This is the end of Empire Strikes Back, where things look real bad for the protagonist. Luke Skywalker's lost a hand. Han Solo's frozen in carbonite. I'm sounding like a nerd if I keep going, and I want people to keep the illusion that I'm cool. With that in mind, before I get in to the bright things to look forward to and what we are moving towards and how we prepare for the eventuality of Project 2025 to at least be attempted to be implemented. I would like to start with what I wrote on Election Day in an effort to motivate people to take to the polls, who may have been on the fence. And I have to pull this back up again because it's from my Instagram, and Instagram will only sit idle for like 5 minutes before it reboots to the homepage. So, here we go. It is Election Day, and I have done the thing. I have done my part to live out the apocryphal Benjamin Franklin quote, "A republic, if you can keep it." I have voted to preserve the republic from the candidate who has consistently spoken, behaved, and inquired in manners directly opposed to our entire idea of governance as a country. Note, the idea of governance and the practice are, at times tragically, different things. I got up and I carried out my little voting ritual. I checked my Korean smartphone to make sure the world hasn't ended. I pull on a pair of vaquero boots from Mexico and a jacket from some English maker. I grab a Vietnamese lunch and a Japanese drink and cast my vote for a candidate whose multicultural identity as the child of Indian and Jamaican immigrants represents both the multicultural promise and the reality of America. Note, the promise and the theorem are often quite different from the practicum. A candidate who I had refused to vote for in prior primaries and whose insistence on playing the middle I find absolutely dreadful. But given the opponent, I had no choice. There is no protest vote in a swing state. After voting, I go to a bar owned by an abortion provider. I voted to protect all of those ideas and people. I voted for every woman I have ever known, for every trans person I have ever known. I vote for people like the Ukrainian girl who I met recently who has to worry about her brother in their army every day. Marta, if for some reason you are listening, because I did not get the chance to talk to you and promote this, Slava Ukraini, we will persevere. I vote for the friends I've made because the DACA program, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, let them stay in a country they had no choice in being brought to. I voted for the idea of a functional economy, as mass deportations and tariffs would be an unmitigated disaster. I voted for everyone whomst has identified as anything but straight, white, male, cisgendered. I just wish I could have voted for someone who would call a genocide what it is. But one day, things will change if we keep this republic. One day, we will have better choices. Now, unfortunately, that vote did not go to the winning candidate. Not the winning candidate of the Electoral College, and not the winning candidate of the popular vote. And so, in the words of Matt Fraction's run on Hawkeye, the Marvel comic, because I'm once again sounding like a nerd, it's the best thing I know to start the process of talking about moving forward. Okay, this looks bad. And this looks bad because it is bad. And I know that I just said this is not a doomer broadcast. But here is the thing. We do have, as I have said, 69 days to prepare. 69 days to find the light before it gets dark. And yes, that is the first and possibly only utterance, this broadcast, not just these particular instances, of 69 being said on the show without immediately being followed by, nice! And most of us are wondering what to do. And I would like to bring up the quote from an episode of The Boondocks. I do not remember the context. I did not have time to go digging through one of the greatest animated programs of all time. But there's a scene where Huey is distraught. And he's going, "Granddad, what do you do when you can't do nothing, but there's nothing you can do?" And the grandfather goes, "You do what you can." Well, what I can do is I have a platform, and we have the internet for now, and I have no interest in disregarding the use of my platform to provide levity when needed, provide information when needed, to provide a rallying cry when needed. So I would like to read another statement in brief, that I have made in a prior conversation with someone else on the internet that we still have for now. The closest bar to my home is run by a friend whose day job is as, amongst other things, an abortion provider for Planned Parenthood. So moving farther on, I will continue to go there whenever I feel the itch to drink, and also just to check on her and her staff, who will mostly be marginalized not only by the current unfortunate climate in America, but the incoming Trump administration. I will continue to remind people of the slow movement of the poorly oiled machinery of governance. As one of the episodes of the podcast It Could Happen Here in the past week has pointed out, there are not currently enough employees of ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and also the Department of Homeland Security, to carry out the proposed mass deportation effort. And the time that it takes to hire and train those employees, amongst the speed bumps imperiling Trump's other desires, will help buy us time. It will buy us time for organization and preparation, time for joy in whatever we may find, and time for the incredible amount of seats up for grabs in Congress in 2026. In 2026, the midterm election, every seat in the United States House of Representatives will be up for a vote. And every seat in Class 2 of the United States Senate, which is somewhere between a third and a half of the Senate, including both of our shameful senators for the state of North Carolina, will have a chance to potentially get rid of them. What else will I do continuing as we are moving forward? I will continue to get up every day and carry out my regular day job of transporting those with disabilities wherever they need or want to do. The job that I have, I work in public transit, what they call paratransit. You can only utilize the service that pays my bills if you have an Americans with Disabilities Act condition that would preclude you from operating a motor vehicle. Most of those people that we drive to the doctor, to the grocery store, to work, even to the cigar bar, one guy. Most of those people are either blind or visually impaired enough they can't operate a vehicle, or they are in a wheelchair. And almost all of them get to ride for free. And I will continue to use the time that I spend in transit with these people, because one of the transit agencies that I work for here in the Triangle is the one that goes city to city. You can only ride from here in Chapel Hill or Carborough to Raleigh or Durham or Cary or now unfortunately Apex. Or you can only ride from Raleigh to one of those other cities. We do not go within a same city. And I will use that transport time to talk with them about their interests, about their worries, and attempt to provide comfort and levity, not to toot mine own horn. But a lot of the passengers do like riding with me. They find me quite funny and entertaining in a way that they profess that some of the other drivers aren't. And one of the most important things that I will do moving forward for me and my personal mental state, for a lot of my friends I know who tune in or come into the studio or call in via the phone or the internet line that I have set up, is I will continue running my little independent radio show here on Tuesday nights on WCOM. And I've been running through a lot of episodes of that show. It Could Happen. It's about things falling apart and how to put them back together. Been digging back into Howard Zinn and Mary Oliver. I've made it through almost all of the Grapes of Wrath in the last couple of days. And I will cobble together all of that, all of the music I've ever listened to, all of the lessons I picked up growing up in the church. And I will, whenever it seems necessary, come into the studio and broadcast a message of hope and of light and of actions. As of today, 69 days means approximately 10 broadcasts to go until Election Day. Not Election Day, Inauguration Day. Wee-oo. This is a deviation from the formula. I'm also broadcasting from a blue island in a red state. This will be the first show that I record that I post online. So, the secret, if you haven't gathered it, in my view, of what we do moving forward, the secret of how we go forward, how we make it through this attempt to enact Project 2025, how we try to make it through Trump getting a second shot when he has devolved even further into fascism. The secret to how we do that is in the statement, in the same manner of a Norm Macdonald joke where the premise and the setup is actually also the punchline. It's in the word we. Everything that we need is us. The only thing that any of us have moving forwards is all of us. Since Hurricane Helene hit Asheville and the North Carolina mountains and the Appalachians and South Carolina and Georgia and devastated areas considered climate havens, places that were supposed to be safe from the oncoming onslaught of all of the carbon that we have released into the atmosphere. I've watched benefit after benefit after benefit be put together here. And I have plugged mutual aid effort after mutual aid effort. And I've given to GoFundMes. And I'm playing a benefit this coming Saturday with my band Coyote vs. Acme. That's really my friend Marty, the underwriter of this show, the former host, the guy who makes all of this possible, Coyote vs. Acme, at the Speakeasy here with the Orange County All-Stars at 4 o'clock on Saturday. That was a seamless plug. If I could cut to an advertisement break like a podcast, that would be wonderful. But unfortunately, I can't. What we can do is come together as a community. I'll be honest, I was a baby leftist and realistically like a progressive Democrat when COVID hit. And it looked hard, and everyone was worried, and I was worried, but I also got to sit down and stop moving for the first time in over a decade. I got to just sit at the house and do nothing, and that was kind of nice. But then I watched little signs pop up in my neighborhood in Durham at the time, and they said community mutual aid. This is the first time that I really encountered the concept of mutual aid, and mutual aid is not charity. Mutual aid is a community coming together right now over the difficulties we are facing and sharing their resources to make sure that if one has, all has. It is, if you ask people on the right and you explain that concept, they're going to go, that's woke, that's socialism, that's communism. We don't do that here. That is the secret to how we have survived everything. The secret to how we move forward is together. We come together. We know who is in danger. The campaign told us straight up in their advertisements what we do moving forward. We, the women, we, the trans, we, the Latino, we, the poor, we, the non-binary, we, the childless, we, the unhoused. We, the undocumented, we get together and we check on each other and we talk to each other and we address our collective and individual needs moving forwards. We do not let them win. We do not give in to the fear because that is what they want. They want you to be afraid. They want you to give up. They want you to think it is so hopeless that you do not vote, as 20 million people who are registered to vote did not in 2024. Approximately 15 million fewer registered Democrats cast a vote in 2024 than did in 2020. Approximately 5 million fewer registered Republicans cast a vote. This is not going to turn into yet another dissection of how the Kamala Harris campaign lost. Basically, straight up, what I will say, she ran a bad campaign. The Democrats, they ran a bad campaign. You can't play to the center because, as the late Joan Didion said, the center will not hold. If you want it another way, you can't play the middle because in 1991, Pearl Jam, the band who played their first show on the day and about the time I was born, sang in the song Porch, well, there ain't gonna be any middle anymore. And we have only seen, if you follow the American political system, the middle fall away. The center refused to hold time and time as we have moved from 1991, 90 when the song was written, into 2024. But we can come together and we can look after, and I have talked my mouth dry, and I'm going to cut to a Bruce Springsteen song called Long Walk Home, because to get back to the America that I know we can be, regardless of my skepticism if we even need a state or an overarching government or borders or any of it, I'm not sure we need any of that. To get back to a country that invests in its people and takes care of those on the bottom of society, it's going to take a long walk, and we haven't even started the process of getting as far away as the walk will be. I have lost the metaphor. I'm going to play the song and drink some water. Welcome back to the Blotter Radio Zine on 103.5 LP, low power, WCOM FM in Carborough, your community radio station. This is a fireside chat, if you will, to pull from Franklin Delano Roosevelt, about how we move forward in the face of the re-election of Donald Trump. And I know some of y'all don't even want to hear his name spoken. But here's the thing. Donald Trump did not burst forth from a boil on the buttocks of American society like Athena from Zeus's forehead. No, there are many precursors to Trump. The most clear and obvious is Ronald Reagan in 1980, and especially his landslide in 1984. And here's the thing. In 1984, Ronald Reagan won every state's electoral votes except for Minnesota. Good for you, Minnesota. And you know, people thought that it was hopeless. People thought after 84, this was the end of the Democratic Party. If everyone, for the most part, gave in to Reagan, that was it. He won California. He won New York. Reagan won Rhode Island. Here's the thing about our smallest state. There is one state in the country where Kamala Harris won every single county. Donald Trump did not win a single county's vote in the state of Rhode Island, a state that voted overwhelmingly for Ronald Reagan. The fight is not over. They want you to think it's over. These people want you to be so despondent that you leave the country, or that, trigger warning, you kill yourself. That's why, amongst other things, calls to the National Suicide Hotline have skyrocketed in the days since the election. Well, you can't give in to that darkness. You have to find joy where it is possible. And in the face of darkness, and in that spirit, I would like to recite a Mary Oliver poem entitled Don't Hesitate. If you suddenly and unexpectedly feel joy, don't hesitate. Give into it. There are plenty of lives and whole towns destroyed or about to be. We are not wise and not very often kind. As much can never be redeemed. Still, life has some possibility left. Perhaps this is its way of fighting back. That sometimes something happens better than all the riches or power in the world. It could be anything, but very likely you notice it in the instance when love begins. Anyway, that's often the case. Anyway, whatever it is, don't be afraid of its plenty. Joy is not made to be a crumb. Snapping in the spirit of slam poetry. Please clap. Odd time to quote Jeb Bush. But we have joy to be found, and it is okay to feel down and to feel bad. Everyone I know has been terrified and anxious and shaking and deleting their social media and logging out and leaving the phone at home when they leave the house. But we're still going to have sunrises and sunsets to watch. I'm blessed enough through the course of my job that more often than not, I get to witness both the sunrise and the sunset from the highways and byways of the triangle, of the Research Triangle here in North Carolina. There will still be dogs to pet, cats to watch absolutely whiff on an easy jump, the laughter of our friends, that inexplicable joy you feel when a random small child looks at you and smiles. Child you don't know. You're not doing anything. You're not mugging for it. Sometimes the little kid just looks at you and smiles. We'll still have music and food. There will be plenty of things to enjoy that will exist. They will bring levity in starts and fits. And also, on election night, there were huge legislative victories. Delaware elected the first ever trans person to Congress in Sarah McBride. And her interview on NPR, I don't remember which show it was, afterwards, they asked her about how she feels to Congress and hitting this milestone for the trans community in such a dark time, given that Trump won and the Senate majority remains Republican. And she goes, amongst other things, this is the only quote I can remember, well, maybe it's like a slingshot, progress. You have to pull it back before it shoots forwards. Maryland elected a black woman to the U.S. Congress in the Senate for the first time in the state's history. Of the 10 states that had abortion protections on the ballot, 7 of them chose to codify into state law at least partial protections of a woman's right to choose. And amongst the 3 states that failed, in Florida, that provision, that law, got a majority vote. But Florida's legal process, legislative process, requires a 60% vote. And I want to say it was 53% of Floridians voted. It requires a majority, but it requires 60. And 60 is a lot. Here in North Carolina, my home state, the only place I've ever gotten mail, only address I've ever put onto anything. We defeated Mark Robinson, the porn website forum self-identifying black Nazi. Google Mark Robinson Dookie shoot if you missed that wonderful CNN story. He lost. So we got the Democrat Josh Stein, our current Attorney General. We also, I say we in the term of Democrats, I traditionally vote for whoever the Democratic nominee for an office is because we have the Red Scare never ended in America. So if you hear if you say socialism, people hear communism, and when you say communism, people hear the Soviet Union, as in the Bolsheviks who portrayed everyone the literal first chance they got every time. But we got the governor. We got the lieutenant governor. We got, thankfully, because most of my friends and a lot of my relatives, etc., grew up to be teachers, we got in charge of the whole school system, North Carolina State Superintendent, Secretary of Education, whatever the actual office is. We got Mo Green instead of Michelle Morrow, an actual January 6th stormer of the Capitol who had called for Barack Obama to be assassinated. She lost, thankfully. And we also got Jeff Jackson moving from like the state Senate or House or wherever he was into the Attorney General position. But we broke the supermajority that has crippled Cooper's administration, our current Democratic governor, by being able to override his vetoes by having enough Republicans in both the House and the Senate that Phil Berger leader of the North Carolina State Senate and chief candidate for brick to the face for our entire state, has been able to just do whatever he wants. He's been the most powerful man in North Carolina politics for a long time. Well, he still can run roughshod over the Senate, but the House morning has broken. So moving forward, we take the time to grieve. We take the time to regroup. If you feel like drinking about it and you felt like drinking about it, I ain't going to fault you, but don't do nothing that might hurt nobody else. If you want to turn to other things, we've had a lot of bad cocaine in the area. Stay away from that, please. If you need to party, if you just want to sit back and watch television and YouTube and TikTok and just doom scroll, if that's what you need to process, take that time. If you want to take succor and comfort in the arms and in the body of a person you love or in a complete stranger, do so with consent. And speaking of consent, after the 26-year-old white supremacist neo-Nazi of Mexican origin, Nick Fuentes of Chicago, tweeted, "Your body, my choice," that I responded to in a manner that I thought would get me kicked off of Elon Musk's little personal playground. A lot of people have been saying, "Your body, my choice." We've been getting reports of people who teach having boys say that to girls in their classrooms. And I gotta say, if for some reason you're listening to this show now, especially if you've been listening for the 37 minutes I've been on the air, and you ain't tuned out yet, but you're the kind of guy who has said or is thinking, yeah, it is your body, my choice, and this is a statement I am going to say now is not endorsed and does not reflect the views of WCOM-FM. If you're saying that to someone I know, and especially if you act upon that, it's going to be your body and my choice. And bear in mind that it takes slightly more pressure to crush a human eyeball under your thumb than a grape, and I'm a man without scruples. But the machinery of governance, as I mentioned earlier, moves slowly. Donald Trump had a lot that he wanted to get accomplished in his first 4 years that he didn't. And we have the chance, if we organize and we come together right now over, I don't like John Lennon personally, not that I knew him, and we get together and you look at who's running on the ballot, and if you know somebody that you think, if you're listening to this show and you've got the kind of influence to pick a House or a Senate candidate, why aren't you doing something a little more noteworthy on a Tuesday night? And also, thank you. But you look at the ballot. The primary in American politics, at least for the president, is more important. That helps determine who's going to win. That is part of why people speculate that Kamala Harris lost, is because she did not garner more than, 4% of any primary in 2020? And there was no primary this year. Joe Biden promised to be a one-term candidate, and he backed down from that. And also, he continued, as he has done for, let's say, his entire political career, to not care about the people of Palestine. He has let Benjamin Netanyahu, fail son, the only person in his family to not be a fail son. The man who was born as the grandson of one of the architects of the Zionist project. Benjamin Netanyahu is doing what he was raised to do by his father, who was raised to do it by his grandfather. It will be very difficult to get Bibi, quote unquote, to back down. The only thing we can do is stop giving him unlimited ammunition. And Biden is a long-term promised Zionist. Kamala did not really want to make a statement one way or the other. And as someone who has known a handful of Palestinian diaspora over the years. My friend Nadia, who grew up playing in the rubble as a child and was so young playing in the rubble of I don't know if it would be the first infantada or a little later. We've lost touch because she deleted all of her socials around the pandemic-ish. But she was living in South Dakota, one of the states that refused to codify abortion rights into law, in the state that gave us Kristi Noem, the dog killer. But she was there organizing pro-Palestine marches and protests as best she could in South Dakota in 2012. That will let you know right there that this is nothing new. The climate change issue that we're facing is nothing new. They've caught Exxon covering it up in the 50s. And if you read The Uninhabitable Earth, I can't remember the name of the author offhand. I did not write it down. But most of the carbon that's in the atmosphere causing the problems we're facing now, this year, people have stated recently, scientists, I wish I'd jotted down in my notes the study, or at least where to find it, that this may be the first year that we globally missed the target of 1.5, 2.5 degrees of warming. Well, most of that carbon has been released since Seinfeld started airing on TV originally. That is July of 1989. If you would like a different reference for how that's the lifetime of a single individual, in December of 1989, one Taylor Allison Swift was born. And given that the reading I was doing and the listening about the uninhabitable Earth was from 2021, it's safe to say that we could adjust that calendar and say that the majority of the climate, as in over 50, not necessarily the plurality like the 60 you'd need to pass a law in Florida, has entered the atmosphere since your erstwhile and handsome. If you've never seen me, just assume that I'm 6'4" and look like Jason Momoa, but without the Johnny Depp support. Your erstwhile host was born in October of 1990. 85%, give or take, of the carbon in the atmosphere causing these issues has been released since the end of World War II. You know, in my grandmother's lifetime. This is getting a little doomery, but trust me, if we band together, take, for example, the Native American, the indigenous peoples of the Americas, of Canada, of Central and Southern America. People like Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, and I believe Duke University's own Stephen Miller, have been trying to eradicate them since Christopher Columbus first got lost in 1492. And if they have not been able to get the job done in 532 years, I don't personally think they can do more damage in the 2 years until the 2026 midterm than we can turn around. There are a lot of us out there, your host included, whose voter registration card still says mulatto. Thing I didn't know the state of North Carolina was doing anymore. But mutual aid is the key. You check on your friends. If you know a person who is going to be targeted and directly affected by this administration, who owns a business, you frequent it. I went to the bar in town that I'm not going to name because I'm worried at the emboldenment of the far right, of the extremists. In Durham, a couple of days ago, a bunch of guys in a white Nissan or Toyota, I don't remember exactly, you can look it up online if they haven't deleted it off the internet, hung a Patriot Front banner from the top of a parking deck at the American Tobacco campus. Patriot Front is an explicit white supremacist, white nationalist, neo-Nazi organization. And if you look at the one guy they caught on the security camera footage, he has a shaved head and this stupid facial hair that looks like a little up arrow, as in it's telling you where to aim. This is not an endorsement of violence, because what they want us to do is enact violence. Trump's espoused a lot of rhetoric
rhetoric about the enemy within. Well, the last time America got really, really concerned with the enemy within, we built concentration camps in the desert, and we locked up Americans of Japanese descent, and we locked up Americans of German descent, and we locked up some people who looked like they might be Japanese who weren't, until after the Japanese surrendered in World War II. Amongst the people who got caught up and spent his childhood in one of those camps was the internet's favorite old gay uncle, George Takei. Oh my, I totally butchered that, but you get what I was going for. You know who Mr. Sulu is. You know the like hand over the mouth meme. George Takei had to grow up in barbed wire watching his parents and his uncles and his family members know that the country that they could have been, I don't remember the full details of his family history, but the country that was supposed to be theirs decided, you're the enemy within. We cannot trust you just because of your heritage, just because of where you or your parents or your grandparents came from. We cannot trust you. You need to be locked up. That is what is coming. And I know, if you know me personally, first of all, spoiler alert, don't look like Jason Momoa. Not 6'4", do have long, luscious mane that people like sometimes. That's complicated. I'm making myself uncomfortable. But I could quite easily cut my hair, shut my mouth, stop adding a they to the end of the he pronoun, surprise if you're listening, Mom, and just skate through in easy mode, because as long as I run the delete me protocols and get all of my more leftist, anarchist, anarcho-socialist, whatever, democratic socialist leanings scrubbed from the internet, they're not going to come looking for me the way they're going to come looking for a lot of people. I have that luxury, which is why I cannot cut my hair. I cannot shut my mouth and scrub my history of political thoughts from the internet. People like me who have this privilege, it is our duty to be a comfort to our friends, to be a shield for our friends who will be targeted by it, and if necessary, be their sword. That's sounding rather militant again, but I don't care. I'm not going to say that I don't have murder in my heart at times, but I'm not a person who defaults to violence. The kind of moral and political actor that I would like to be is the revolutionary who's going to topple it, like Nestor Makhno of the Black Ukrainian Army and the time that they fully attempted to build a stateless, classless society based and informed largely on the works of Marx. I started to say void of the anti-Semitism, but it's never void of the anti-Semitism inherent in Marx, unfortunately. Makhnovchino was a beautiful, beautiful dream, and every single side of that conflict, the people who wanted to reinstate the Russian Empire, the people who wanted to build a Ukrainian nationalist state, and the Red Army of the Bolsheviks that became the Soviet Union, all combined to destroy the anarchists because they all knew it was a threat. And this is not about anarchism. This is about how we move forward collectively. You protect your friends. You check on them. Now, if you are a trans person, I've seen a lot of trans journalists and podcasters and media figures that I know suggesting that if you are in the process of changing your paperwork or haven't got to changing your official paperwork, your identification, it may be safer for you moving forward to have your paperwork reflect the identity, the gender presentation that you can most easily pass as, rather than yourself. It is not my place to tell you that, but I have seen actual trans journalists and writers and reporters, Margaret Killjoy and Garrison Davis and Mia Wong, suggest this. Those are their words. It is their struggle. It is your struggle. But is there any struggle that is not our struggle? I've been by the great John Steinbeck, which unfortunately in my revisiting, I have discovered that there is evidence that very possible evidence that Steinbeck could have plagiarized portions of The Grapes of Wrath. But if you've read the book or you've seen the movie, or as I was told to read the book in high school, but I wasn't particularly interested in reading it at the time. But I got into Bruce Springsteen, and there's a song called The Ghost of Tom Joad. I'm sorry to bring up Springsteen again, but what do you do? He's possibly the person in the music industry who's believed the most in the American dream of anyone, including deep, deep, biting criticism of the reality of America. But the character of Jim Casey, who was a preacher, people still call him a preacher, even though he claims he lost the spirit and lost the touch and wouldn't preach anymore. And it's really awkward the one time they get him to try and say grace, because that book's a lot funnier than the movie would suggest. But he said, maybe a person ain't got no soul. Maybe all you got's a piece of one big soul that's everybody's. But I would like to read, it was adapted into the end of the movie, because the end of the book is really touching. And if I can get through this with time left, I might describe it. Or we might just talk about it on a further edition of the Blotter radio scene. But this is the last scene of Tom Joad, the main protagonist of the book and the hero of the movie. Although if you read the book, the hero is his mother, Ma Joad. This is their last interaction. And he's leaving, and he says, well, maybe like Casey says, a fella ain't got a soul of his own, only a piece of a big one. And then the mother goes, then what, Tom? And he goes, then it don't matter. Then I'll be all around in the dark. I'll be everywhere, wherever you look. Wherever there's a fight so hungry people can eat, I'll be there. Wherever there's a cop beating up a guy, I'll be there. If Casey knowed why, I'll be in the way guys yell when they're mad. And I'll be in the way kids laugh when they're hungry and they know supper's ready. And when our folks eat the stuff they raise and live in the houses they build, well, I'll be there. See? And if you know where to turn and when to turn your radio dial, I will be there. And if you know someone who is endangered by this administration, I will encourage you to be there, because I know I will. And with that in mind, I would like to take us out on a song I've played on the show, one of the most important sentiments there is, and this is how we move forward. We understand that this land is our land. It is not theirs. So this is Woody Guthrie and Arlo Guthrie to take us out. This has been the Blotter Radio Zine. We will make it through, inshallah.